Hey guys, it's Jake here. Hope everybody's having a good day today. So I have another video for you all. In this video, we're going to look at some more of my collection, and we're going to talk a little bit about gold stars. So gold stars were one of the first cards that I was interested in, and was definitely the first group of cards that I was interested in outside of the Wizards of the Coast era. I only grew up with the Wizards of the Coast stuff, so when I got back into Pokemon, I was curious to see what other cards had been printed after that, and if there were any like really cool arts that I liked, any really rare, scarce cards that it would be fun to chase down. And when I heard about the gold stars and I started to see some of the arts on these cards, I knew that I definitely wanted to collect these. I was very excited to learn about them. And so I would say about a year into collecting, once I had met or made some pretty good progress on a lot of my Wizards of the Coast goals, I started collecting these. So I have most of these cards I have in 9s because it was more affordable for me to collect them in 9s and allowed me to be able to get more of them than I otherwise would have if I went after the 10s. I also graded a lot of these myself, particularly the Japanese ones, but some of the English ones as well. And that way too, I was able to save money. One of the luxuries of being in the hobby during that time was that there were a lot of there were mint copies, and I think less people were sort of comfortable or used to grading, and so you were able to find more of these mint cards in people's collections, whereas now a lot more people are looking for those cards and hunting those cards, and there just aren't as many of them. Just sort of the reality of the current day marketplace with the increase in popularity. So a couple of things to mention about these. The pull rate for most of the gold stars is 1 in 72, so that's about 1 in every 2 booster boxes you could expect to pull one of these gold stars. So really difficult pull rate. That's true outside of the EX Power Keepers, where I've heard reports. I haven't opened a single pack of any of these cards, honestly, and I'd really like to someday. It's just outside of like my budget, and it's so expensive to open those cards that financially it's just like hard to justify that at this point. Although maybe for this channel I'll splurge sometime. We can open up some together or something like that. We'll see how things go in the future. But just for myself, it didn't feel financially like a good move. Although maybe for like special events in my life or something down the line, it would be a really cool celebration for milestones in my life to open some of these packs. But because I haven't opened any of these packs myself, I get my information from looking online, and what I've seen from online is that the EX Power Keepers is the easiest ones to pull, and it's the same for the EXs. And in the EX Power Keepers, the Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon cards that you can get from there, the gold stars, are the easiest ones to pull, and that the pull rate, I've heard anything between you can pull 2 of those per box to 1 a box. So somewhere between 1 in 18 packs to 1 in 36 packs are going to pull those. So those are the easiest ones to pull. And then the Espeon and the Umbreon are also quite a bit easier to pull at about 1 out of 40 packs or so. What's interesting about those packs, the Pop Series packs that those come in, is that they cannot be weighed. And so that does make it in some ways more difficult to pull that card, because those cards aren't hollow, so those packs can't be weighed as easily and mapped out. So it's really like random guessing. You really have to open up a ton of those, whereas with these packs, you can weigh them and try to just open up the heavy ones, which theoretically would increase your odds of pulling one. You wouldn't have to pull as many, completely empty hollow packs to get one. So that's some background information. And, part of why these cards are so valuable is that combination of very difficult pull rates with not a lot of these booster packs or booster boxes thought to exist, and also the extremely high prices of those booster boxes and booster packs, because the product seems to be so difficult to find. compared to other areas and eras, and even compared to things like, your Jungle Fossil Rocket, where there seems to be, particularly Team Rocket and Fossil, where there seems to be a lot more of that product around still. Although that's too is becoming harder and harder to find, and obviously the prices on particularly the first edition versions of those have really gone up. All right, so here's the first card. As I said before, I believe, and I'll repeat now, I collected most of these in 9s due to the price point, and also I was not able to complete my Gold Star collection because I wasn't able to find all of these cards at prices that I felt comfortable with at the time, and so I wasn't able to complete it. And also there's some cards where I have doubles, and there's some cards where I have Japanese as well. Because I really like the Japanese versions as well of some of these, and I like having both. And I think it'll also be a good opportunity to show you some of those Japanese cards, so we can look at the variations in the art. Not so much in the art, but in the border of the card, the color of the card, and we can talk a little bit about the first edition versus unlimited versions of these cards in the Japanese. Okay, so here's the mud kit. Next card I have for you is the Trico, and these are from the EX Team Rocket Return set. So I'm missing the Torchic, which is the most expensive of the 3 generally, because it's the hardest to grade. Last time I checked, the Torchic and I'll have it on the screen, but had about a population of 15 or so, and was the most difficult, was the lowest pop Gold Star, and also because of that, one of the most expensive generally. So from the EX Deoxys has some of the other hardest cards to pull, cards to grade, and also is thought to be probably some of the scarcest packs. I think the EX Team Rocket Returns and the Deoxys are definitely 2 of the harder sets to find sealed product for, and 2 of the more desirable. This Latios is the only one I have. The Latios and the Rayquaza were always usually the more expensive. The Latios and the Latias are pretty similar in price, although the Latias is usually a little more expensive and a little harder to find. But the Rayquaza isn't necessarily harder to find. Actually, it can be a bit easier to find, but it's the most desirable of the Pokemon. It has amazing art, and Rayquaza is very popular. All right, so here's a PSA 10 that I do have. And here's a card that I have a couple copies of because I really like the art, and I was able to find really good prices. And I think I actually might have graded one of these. I think the 9 potentially, although it's hard to remember now. So this 10 I was able to get actually right before the prices started going up on everything. I was feeling that the prices were about to skyrocket, and so I actually bought a few 10s from someone, and I think I made 2 or 3 purchases that had some 10s in them, and that's how I got my Gold Star 10s, because I had a feeling that this might be my last chance to get them at prices that I could really afford for at least a while. So I picked this guy up, one of my favorite Pokemon and favorite arts. Just a really cool card, in my opinion. And here, just to show you guys also, is the Japanese version. This is a non-first edition Japanese. For first edition, you'll be able to see the first edition stamp there if it is first edition. Interestingly, the first edition is not actually necessarily rarer than the unlimited version in Japanese. The way Japanese first edition and unlimited was printed is that they did a first edition printing, and then if they needed more, if the cards were still being purchased and they needed to print more, then they would do unlimited printings. And so in some cases, it's thought that there's actually less unlimited cards than there are first edition cards, because these necessarily weren't that popular. People weren't buying them that much, these sets at that time, that they didn't need to have as large of a unlimited print run as they actually had that first print run in that first edition. So it's kind of interesting to see how prices of like first edition Japanese versus unlimited Japanese will go over time. So here's another PSA 10 Kyogre. Love the card. I love the art on all of these. I really enjoy looking at these cards. Definitely some of my favorite cards from my hobby, from the hobby that I have in my collection. Again, this is one of my favorite shiny Pokemon, the way it looks. I remember when I was doing Pokemon Go, this was one of the ones I was excited to get in shiny form. And here's an example of it in to show you guys the first edition Japanese. You have this first edition stamp on the bottom. And the difference between, as you can see here, we have the Japanese and the English variants. The English has that yellow border and the Japanese has that silver. And I kind of like the look of both. Sometimes I prefer the silver and it goes with it, but sometimes I like the yellow because it kind of brings it out more. I think some of the cards I prefer the yellow on, some I might prefer the white on. I really like the Rayquaza Gold Star with the white. I've seen the Japanese version and I considered buying that sometimes because it's quite a bit less expensive and I really like the look of it. Some of them I prefer, I think, with the yellow and the English. My opinions do change sometimes on that. So here's actually a BGS version that I bought. For those who don't know, these cards, there was the reason that the Gold Star dogs, and probably a number of you already know this, but the reason the Gold Star dogs are so much less expensive is there was a bit of some sort of scam, some sort of thing happened where some guy, I guess, got a number of these cards, got them out of some sort of printing situation, was given to them by someone, connected to the printing of these, to the original printing of these. And so he had, we don't know how many cards. I've never read anyone who knows how many cards this person has, but they probably graded, hundreds of these, and had hundreds of these, and they might have more. I don't really know the answer to that. I would love to hear an update from anyone who knows, if anyone knows in the comments, on what the current situation. I think a lot of people collecting these don't know about that, and so the prices on these have actually gone up quite a bit, as the prices on everything have gone up. But that's something to really know, that although these dogs look amazing, they're a lot easier to find in English. Now, however, the Japanese ones, which I was able to pick up and have a lot of these because I really like the art on these and I like the white border. These Japanese cards, the same thing didn't happen with these. So these do have the rarity. A lot more of the rarity than those English variations. So that's the one, the unlimited one, and here's a first edition example that I was able to. And these cards I was actually able to all acquire and grade myself, which was exciting. And when I found this lot, I was really, this is probably one of the best lots I ever bought because these cards were all just gem mint condition. Here's an unlimited of the Raikou. I don't have the Suicune. I would like to at some point get that card, but I'm, in not a huge rush. I'll probably buy it in Japanese, as I just don't like buying the English ones because of the whole scam around it. It just turns me off from the card. Because I don't know if I'm buying it from that guy, who's scamming the community. So I don't like it. So I went after them mostly in Japanese, but I did find that English BGS one for really cheap. So I did purchase that one. Here's another PSA 10. One of the Regis. I don't have the other two in English. I actually went for them in Japanese, which I graded. So some of these I have both the Japanese and the English. Some of them I just have the Japanese or just have the English. These two are Japanese. This is the one I think that actually graded a 9, maybe 2 from that excellent lot I bought where they were all 10s. So I really like these cards too. I like the art. The Regis are not some of my favorite Pokemon, to be honest, but for Reggie arts, those are pretty great. So this is probably, and I have been looking for this in a PSA 10. It's so hard to find the Papa Solo. As I've said in one of the Q&As, I love Gyarados, one of my favorite Pokemon. This card is one of my very favorite cards. It's also a Delta species, Gold Star. I'd like to own a lot of that card if I could. I was able to pick up a few of them, which I tried to grade. Got this 8.5. I think I graded that one. I'm not 100% sure. This one I definitely did grade, the Japanese version, non-first edition one. Or sorry, this is a first edition one here. Just love that card. So I picked up 3 copies of it because I really like it. Here is a Celebi PSA 10, another one that I bought right before the spike and got very fortunate. Part of it is because I was so, as I preach on this channel, you got to stay engaged, and you can kind of feel, and not just engaged at looking at prices, but engaged at talking to people and interacting with people, and you can kind of sense when things are about to skyrocket, or when things are about, when people are sort of getting greedy and starting to try to get as many cards as they can, and then when people are starting to be sort of fearful and anxious. And, I think as we plateau here and as prices plateau, that's something that I would encourage people to try and sense. When more and more people start talking negatively or start getting a little anxious or worried about prices, that's usually when you can tell that we're maybe nearing the top without another huge influx of cash by some Gary Vee style 100 millionaire, which can at any point change anything, because we have a pretty small community here, and $100 million is a lot of money. Or putting in $1 million or something would be a huge amount of money in the Pokemon community. So here's a Japanese version of that Crystal Celebi. Another really cool looking card. Here's an Alakazam, another one of my favorite Pokemon. I was really happy to pick up this card. This card was actually very inexpensive for a while. I thought about buying a few of these, but I just didn't quite have the money to do it, because I would have had to not buy other cards that I really wanted. So I did consider picking up a few of those, because I did think that they were underpriced given the popularity of the Pokemon. Here's the Charizard, one of the favorites. Charizard is always one of the favorites. Great card, shiny Charizard. Another one of my favorite cards. This Mew here. Almost picked up a second one of these before the price spikes. It's just a little bit outside of my budget, but I knew it was going to go up a lot in value, and I thought about picking it up and then flipping it, but I spend inside my budget, guys. I stick to my investment/collector strategies, and generally that's been good to me, over the long run, so I didn't take that risk. But really happy to own this one again, another card I bought right before the price spike, and there were 2 of them sitting at about $1,000, and thought about picking up both of them. I put this on the list just to show you guys that the Gold Stars also exist as these World Championship cards. These were cards that you could buy from a deck. And it'd be interesting to see the price on these over time. I do think they have some value because they have that art. A few things to mention, though. They're not hollow. They have that silver border, similar to the Japanese, unlike the yellow border. And be interesting to see what the prices of these do over time. I actually had this card raw, and I got it in a collection, and it looked just like definite gem mint quality. It was really a flawless card, and so I decided to get it graded because I thought it would have some value in the future, and I think the prices of these have been pretty decent, and it will retain some value, and was probably worth grading. I also think it's interesting to have one of those as a comparison. So now we're getting into the dogs. So these were always definitely lagging in price because people, I think, understood that, most of the older collectors understood that these were a lot easier to get. Not necessarily the Japanese ones, but and I don't know the answer to that, actually. If someone knows, do the Japanese ones have the same easier pull rate, or are those harder? But the English ones are definitely easier to pull than the other Gold Stars. These cards are gorgeous. They have great art, and they're of some of the most popular Pokemon. So I think part of the reason why prices have really gone up on these, on the one hand, it's people I think don't know that they're easier to pull, to be fair. But I think on the other hand, they're some of the most popular Pokemon and look so cool. And they still, because they're Gold Stars, and because they're so desired, there still is never going to be probably enough of these to go around that you're ever going to have to worry about huge retraces on these types of cards. Beautiful hollow pattern, beautiful card. And again, graded that one myself. Here's one that I picked up for really cheap. I think I picked up this for like $50 at the time, and I just thought at $50, I just love the card, the art, the history. Just seems like a no-brainer to me. Maybe $60. here's another Japanese, another one that graded 9 from that collection. You know, really cool looking, to give you guys those two. And then I think this Vaporeon, I think I picked up both of these together in that lot for about $50 each, $60 each. So I got them just to have the art in my collection. You know, great card, and again in Japanese. All right, so that is the last Gold Star card I have. You know, I'm still hoping to complete these someday, but for me, it's all about patience. And if I never do get them in really high grades, eventually I'll probably just buy them in sort of lower grades. You know, and my general feeling and strategy is like, I'm okay not owning. I'm very happy and I feel very lucky and fortunate to own any of these cards, and I don't feel a strong need or desire to own them all. So I get a lot of pleasure from what I have, and I'm very satisfied with that. And if they do ever come down into my price range, or if I ever am able to sort of save enough money and I see the market be stable enough that I feel comfortable buying again at these prices, I would you know, purchase some of these cards again and try to complete the collection. So thank you all so much for tuning in for this video. I hope you enjoyed looking at some of these cards as much as I did. You know, please let me know your guys' thoughts on Gold Stars. Do you collect them? Are these cards that you're looking for right now? Do you think they're overvalued, undervalued, that sort of thing? You know, they've moved up quite a bit in price, but, you know, no more than a lot has moved up. I think they've kind of moved up, you know, sort of a solid amount, and somewhat similar to a lot of the Wizards of the Coast product. Some of them have moved up more for sure, but overall, my sense is that they've moved sort of a similar degree, and I think that makes a lot of sense because I think that these are really considered, you know, very vintage, very historical, and will always keep that coolness factor and that history factor. I don't think that we ever really have to worry that these are going to, that as long as Pokemon continues to do well, these cards are always going to be very highly sought after. All right. So thanks again for watching, and I'll have another video for you guys soon. All right, take care.